This program is presented by University of California Television. Like what you learn? Visit our website or follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with the latest UCTV programs.
One thing I felt was my greatest strength is the love of people. It was never about the money. It was about having fun. And I learned at a very young age that no one had fun if they consistently lose money. If they come in with average intelligence, with a great attitude and enthusiasm and willingness to work, they're going to make it.
The center is the customer. They're the ones who are paying for everything.
I just saw this as, oh my God, this is like my chance.
$250,000, it was almost surreal.
You can't just cut out one person in the supply chain in order to solve the problem.
Those are the kind of people you want. You respect them, their integrity, their intelligence, their ability, their can-do attitude, hard work.
Welcome back to UC Santa Barbara's Distinguished Speaking Series. We have with us tonight Jim Zarley. I enjoy all of our speakers. I've really been anticipating Jim's talk. I've gotten to know him through a board that we're on together, and I'm telling you, it's an education for me to sit on a board with Jim Zarley. I learn something every time we get together, and it's just a treat for me, so I know that you guys are going to learn quite a bit as well. Jim has had an amazing career. He spent 19 years with RCA, and in that time he got to be involved in a number of high-level positions, worked on some restructuring, some workouts, going into divisions that were having trouble and helping turn those around. He focused on a number of things while he was there, but primarily sales and operations. And as I've told you guys before, if you can sell, you can do anything in business. Learn how to sell, get some experience selling. You'll use it all the time, no matter where your career ends up taking you. So after all of that time at RCA, Jim realized, hey, I want to go out and run my own thing. I've been running these divisions, and I've had a lot of autonomy here within RCA, but I want to really go out and do it on my own. And so in the mid-'80s, he purchased his first company, which was Quantech, and they did a number of things during their tenure, but the one I found the most interesting is they automated the California Department of Motor Vehicles in the mid-1980s. And I'm sure that was frictionless and no bureaucracy and really easy. Can't you imagine the Department of Motor Vehicles in the 1980s. Ended up selling that company successfully to ADP, which is a large data company. In '96, he became chairman and CEO of Best Internet, which was a pioneer in the web hosting business. So remember, 1996, this is when the internet's really happening. The World Wide Web was still new, and hosting websites was a new thing. Jim took that company through a couple different mergers. He stayed on as COO until the final merger with Vario, and that happened in 1999. So while he was still working at the hosting company, he made an investment in a company called Valueclick. That was in April of 1998. In January of 1999, he came on board as president of Valueclick, and 1 year later, he became the CEO. He held that post, took it all the way through its initial public offering. He stayed on as CEO until 2012, and then he stayed on as chairman until very, very recently, when he led the company's sale to Alliance Data for $2.3 billion. So Jim took that company from its nascent very beginning, through its IPO, all the way through to a successful multi-billion-dollar sale. And the company's name at the time of the sale was Conversant. They had recently done a rebranding, and that name has been in the news quite a bit lately because of that sale. In addition, during those last 10 years when Jim was quite busy with Valueclick, he was also served on a number of boards, including the Texas Roadhouse restaurant chain. And the reason I mention that is that's something you'll see throughout Jim's career. He's been an internet pioneer, he's had a high-tech career, but he's also had a career in non-tech or in low-tech. And there's opportunities in both. I want you guys to get, if you get nothing else out of this talk, understand that it's not all about software or high tech or the internet. There's lots of great businesses out there that don't involve any technology or very little technology. So he's currently spending his time on a number of private boards. I mentioned the one that I'm fortunate to get to spend time with Jim on. He also has 5 grandkids, two sons that are both accomplished in their own right. He gets to spend time with them. And as you guys know, I don't just focus on bringing in folks that have been very, very successful in their professional life without having a balanced, full life in other areas. And I also like to bring folks in that can be an example to you of philanthropy. And Jim is a great example of that. Through the Zarley Family Foundation, they've helped a number of philanthropic organizations, including the Boys Club, Boys Town. They've worked to fight or helped AIDS research with the Broadway Cares program. And it's one thing to write checks, and that's a wonderful thing. And I hope all of you get in a position in your lives where you can do that. But it's another thing to give of your time. That's actually a much more precious commodity. And Jim and his family have done that. They've led trips to Vietnam and Mexico, where they've actually partnered with the Starkey Hearing Foundation. And they've literally brought the gift of hearing to thousands of people in those countries that simply wouldn't have that gift without the Zarley Foundation's help. Let's welcome Jim to our class.
Thank you. You got my good earphone, too. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jim. So
Did I
Jim,
do all that stuff, bro?
well, you and a couple other people, I just amalgamated. It's like a novel where you take different characters and you composite.
I was getting tired when you were talking about it.
They'll edit that. Nobody will ever see that. Don't worry.
Okay,
It'll
good.
be 2 seconds. It'll be Jim Zarley. So Jim, I'd really like to start kind of at the beginning. I understand your first job was extremely glamorous, and sort of from there, it just got better.
That would be the truck washing job?
Yes.
Is that the one? Yeah.
On the second shift.
It's kind of interesting because one of the things, I'd always had a passion to get a career going while I was in the military. I went from high school directly into the military. And I was able to get a view of how other people live. My last year in the military, I worked for the commanding general of the 101st Airborne. And so I spent a lot of time at the officers club and seeing how other people live. And I said, this is the way I want to live. Mm-hmm. But I also realized that when I got out of the military and I looked at the want ads in the newspaper, that I didn't qualify for very much.
Right.
That I didn't really have any experience. So I need to go out and get a job and start building experience. So I did take the truck washing job. It was second shift to boot, but it was with a company that was large and had lots of different varying things. And I knew that it was just an opportunity for me to go in and show them how I was going to work hard.
Right.
And that if I did that and I was open-minded and communicated with people, that they would see that I was enthusiastic and I had something to offer.
Right.
But I didn't end up staying there. I actually ended up going to RCA with an opportunity there. That was an interesting reason why I was hired there as well.
Yeah, so I do love the reason why. So he had that glamorous job washing trucks on the second shift, and from there you went right to the top of RCA, almost literally, right?
Yes. So I thought I was really going with a great opportunity, and it turned out to be a great opportunity, a great career, and a great company to work for. But the reason they hired me is because of my experience of being a paratrooper in the military. They thought I wasn't afraid of heights, so they had me climbing all the towers and putting the antennas up on top, and I was scared to death. I was so frightened. I worked very, very hard to get off as quickly as I could, but I said...
You were the fastest worker they had.
I said, you don't understand. We had parachutes when we jumped out of the plane. I don't have a parachute when I'm up on that tower. But that was the beginning of a great career with a great company, and I stayed there for 19 years.
Well, I think there's a great lesson for students. First, a couple lessons there. First one is the Washington truck job. I don't think that was his ambition. I don't think that's what you knew that wasn't the end of the road, but it was a good company and you wanted to show that you had the right attitude.
Yep.
And the same thing with RCA, although at the time it was a very respected company and there was a lot of opportunities there,
Yes.
climbing poles and fixing antennas wasn't necessarily what you wanted to do either.
No.
But when confronted with that first opportunity, your answer was yes.
Yes.
And I think that's something that students really want to emulate is, even though what you're doing right out of school may not be exactly what you want to do long term, come in with the right attitude. Come in with the right attitude and learn,
Yes.
and you can write your own path, as Jim has.
In fact, every opportunity that came up with RCA, And I asked for some of the things that were unpleasant to do because I felt it was an opportunity for me to show what I could do if I were put into a situation that someone else couldn't correct or couldn't fix. That, you know, if I could prove that, it would not only it allowed me to go back to those want ads and say, okay, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that. I now am more qualified and can be a little more choosy about what I do in my future.
Right.
But it was all in an effort to kind of prepare myself to have my own business someday. That was
always had that in the
that
back
was
of your
always
mind.
the ambition, is to have my own business of some kind.
Well, I've heard you say that every human is an entrepreneur, and I think you just sort of referenced that, where you always knew at some point in your career you'd have your own business. Well, what do you mean when you say every human's an entrepreneur?
Well, every human has an asset, and that's themselves. And just as when I came out of the military and I realized that I didn't have experience, I knew that I had me,
Right.
and that I was willing to work, and that I love people. I love being competitive, so that, to try and be the best at whatever I'm doing.
Right.
But I felt that, you know, what do I have as an asset? What was it? A willingness to work hard. I was young. I was open to learn. I wanted to prove my value. And those are all things that need to be built in you in order to be a successful entrepreneur.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep,
So-
those are the elements of it. And I think you guys should ask yourself that question. You know, what are the assets that you have at this point in your career? You may think, well, shoot, I'm just graduating from school, I don't have that much. You certainly have all of those things Jim referenced. You know, you have the attitude, hopefully you have the right attitude, you have youth, you have passion, you want to learn, you're curious, and you take that into the workplace, and again, that's going to be welcomed by most healthy companies. So when you say that an entrepreneur needs to define you, you know, in other words, you need to define what makes you. How did you go through that journey? Was it just a matter of taking all of these different jobs and finding out what you did like and didn't like, or did it go beyond that?
Each job I took had some challenge within it. As I continued to grow inside RCA, they would, if I turned something around, like the little branch in Peoria, Illinois was the first one. And you folks won't remember this, but in 1968 and 69, there was a law passed called the Carter Act. And what that was the beginning of the breakup of AT&T. And it was an opportunity for companies to put private telephone systems into businesses and primarily just businesses. And RCA was very big in the hotel industry. I saw that as an opportunity. I was 25 years old. I said, we're going to take this little branch in Peoria, Illinois, and we're going to make the fastest growing branch in the country. We're going to do that by going to every hotel south of Chicago, all the way over to St. Louis, and we're going to sell them a telephone system. And we're going to show them the new law and why we can save them a lot of money. And I started hiring people, and we were the fastest growing branch in this little branch in Peoria with about 12 employees. It was great fun. We were all having a lot of fun because we were all young and we were all, you know, breaking the records within the company. So we all were having a great time doing it.
Yep.
And then from that, sent me to another branch, and then a district, and then a region, then a division of the company over the years. And each one had something about it. One thing I felt was my greatest strength is the love of people and the desire to build a team. And yes, it's work, but I looked at it as a game. It was serious, but it was still a game. And I knew that if I had a good quarterback or I had a good halfback, and this person's going to do this part of the job, this person's going to do that part of the job, and they become my business partners, that we could build something pretty fantastic together. We'd have not just build it, but also have a lot of fun doing it. Because for me, it was never about the money. It was about having fun. And I learned at a very young age that no one had fun if they consistently lose money. You may have fun for just a little while, but somebody's going to end your party. And so to me, with the people that I grew companies with and businesses with over the years, I always focus as, if we do this, this, and this, we can have a lot of fun. And the foundation of it is grow it and make money doing it, and we'll be able to do what we want, and no one will stop us from having all this fun that we have. And that has been that's been part of my core from very early in my life till today. And I'm still having fun.
Well, the other word I heard you use is team. So having fun watching that team grow and bringing people up into that team.
Everybody loves to be part of a winning team. And not just myself, but everybody. And people need to feel like they can think freely and openly. In order for people to think that way, it has to be okay for them to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. So you need to create an environment for them to know that they can make a mistake and they're not going to be in trouble for it. Right. And we all make mistakes. I make them every day. And I look back over the years and you say, well, yeah, you had a successful career, but wait a minute, Google went right on by me and I didn't see it. What the hell happened? Why didn't I build Google? Or why didn't I build Facebook? So you can look at it in that way. But one thing I learned about mistakes is there's an old saying called the knowledge of ignorance is the beginning of wisdom. And if you can take a mistake and acknowledge that it was your mistake, then you can learn and gain something from it. You're paying for it one way or another. You either lost business, you lost money, or you lost a valuable employee. Something happened when you made your mistake. And if you try and pass it off to the Times or economy or this or that or something that Obama did, then you're not doing yourself justice. Win from that mistake and become more knowledgeable, and you won't make the mistake again.
That's great advice. We'll take the first question from the audience.
Hi, my question is, what advice do you have for us young people right now to foster the leadership skills that you had? I know you took a lot of leadership positions in the corporations that you bought, sold, led. So, any advice for us?
Yeah. Good question. My advice is to be willing to work hard and find happiness within yourself. The world is not, the outside world is not going to bring happiness to you. It's within you. And if you do that, it will show in how you work every day. When you come into work and you're saying good morning to everybody and you're enthusiastic, it catches on to other people. And you automatically become a leader just simply because you do that. That in itself is leadership. And my advice would be, whatever you decide to do, whatever that first job is, be enthusiastic about it. Don't look at it as this is what I'm going to do for the next 30 or 40 years. I mean, you may decide that that's what you want to do, but don't look at it in that way. Look at it as, this is the beginning of my entrepreneurship. This is the beginning of me building my value and what I bring to the world. Not necessarily just to this one company. Because the odds are, you're not going to go to one company and stay there for 25 or 30 years. You're going to move to different. Each one is a new opportunity. Each one, you should carry your enthusiasm to it, and your love for people, And there will be people along the way that may be more difficult, and I guarantee you, they're wherever you go. So learn how to work with those difficult people. Don't write them off. Work with them. And learn how to work with different personalities. If you're going to be a leader and you're going to build a large organization, you'll have different personalities that require different styles of how to motivate them. And so that's the beginning of learning. It's just how do you work with people, and how do you embrace them, and how do you bring that enthusiasm to your organization. You'll be valued greatly by whoever hires you if you do that.
And I'd say, just as you said about admitting a mistake, I'd say the same is true for working with other people. If you're not getting along with somebody, own that. Ask yourself, what am I doing wrong to make this relationship not work? Exactly. As opposed to immediately assuming, well, that person's they're a jerk, they're not friendly, or whatever?
I've worked with people that were, this goes back many years, when it seemed like a lot of management, senior management, were heavy drinkers. When I was a young man, I was 24 and 25, 26 years old, I had bosses who were alcoholics, and I had to carry them home, and it was, I didn't like it. But I knew that the pathway for me was to be able to work with these kind of people, and that you find a way to bring value to them. Some of them will ride on your coattail because you're helping making them successful. It's okay. You will win in the end because you'll rise above it. But and some people are just a little bit more difficult to work with, and they will be wherever you go. But if you bring that enthusiasm, they can't deny it. After a while, they have to respond to it. When you're pleasant to them and you're polite and you have energy and enthusiasm, they will. And if they don't, guess what happens? And this happened in my organization. We had a couple thousand people at the end. And the people who don't like to be in that environment don't fit, and they call themselves out. They leave on their own. You don't even have to fire them. If we did, we did. We'd help them out if they didn't. But you do have to do some of that too in the whole scheme of things. But for the most part, people love being in that kind of environment. And the other thing that I did is I made sure as the company grew beyond 200, 300, 400, that there was a name tag in front of every spot so that I could come to know those people and I could call them by name. And they call me by name, not Mr. Zarley, but I was Jim to everybody in the organization, up and down, didn't care what level or anybody was, because we were all business partners. It just so happened that I got to call the ties. But guess what? I never had to. I never had to. Because the consensus of me and my team was that we made decisions together. And I always felt that collective minds will be much wiser than one mind trying to make all the decisions.
So I love the way you look at businesses. I love the way you look at potential investments. And one of the rubrics you use is the 4 legs of the stool. So I'd love for you to share that with the students. What are the 4 legs of the stool?
Is Brian Corey out here? He promised me, or he made me promise that I would tell that 4 legs of the stool story, because Brian always talks about it. But anytime, to me, the definition of entrepreneurship really is planning, not high risk necessarily. There is risk involved, no question. So you're doing something no one else has done. But the more planning you can do, the lower you can take that risk. And the easier it is to raise money, by the way. And the first leg of the stool is no matter what you're doing, whether you're opening a bakery on the corner, or whether or you have a global idea that could serve the world. The first leg of that stool is to determine what size this could be. How big is the market? Do I serve a zip code? Do I serve a state? Do I serve a region? Do I serve the globe? How big is this? And define it as best you can. It may not be perfect, but the more research you can do to define the size of the opportunity, the better off you are. The second leg of the stool for Jim Zarley is how do I make money at it? What do I really need to have? Do I need a technical organization? And how many programmers would I need to just get it started, to get it going? How big is that organization? And what's it going to cost me? Very important question. What's it going to cost me to sell it? What's it going to cost me to get someone to buy this product or to have salespeople? Is it going to sell on my first visit to a customer, or is it going to take me a year to sell it? Those are the kinds of things you need to understand in the model. And the more accurate you can be with it, the lower the risk. The third leg of the stool for me is capitalization. How much money do I have to prove it works? I always like to think in terms of a small startup as being $1 million investment. And that could vary, but typically I think You probably need about $1 million to really prove that what you have is a real product and you can make it work. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3, but most that I've done are in that $1 million range. And just prove to your investors, which if you're raising $1 million, it's probably going to be your mom and dad and cousins and aunts and uncles and friends. You're not going to go to some investment company to raise $1 million. And no one else is going to talk to you because you've never done it before. So raising that first tranche, you want to take the lowest risk possible to prove your concept. And then the fourth leg of the stool is the most important of all, and that's who's going to do it. Who's going to go from soup to nuts to make this work? Who's going to get the product built? Who's going to develop the business plan? Who's going to execute on the sales strategy? Who's going to go out and meet with the customers? Who's going to service the customer once we've done it? And who's going to take ownership of all that? Is it you? Is it you, the entrepreneur? That's fine if it is. And I think it's great that's what you want to do. Are you going to be the person who runs it as it grows bigger? You know, you think about that whole execution. You can do the first 3 perfectly and miss the 4th one and fail. You can miss the first 1 or 2 a little bit, and the odds are it's going to be something a little different than what you thought it was going to be when you first started thinking about this idea. That's okay, but you've done deep research on it. It's a minor tweak, but the execution and the capitalization, if you miss those, you're either out looking for more money or you can't get the job done and you failed.
Team.
People.
We'll
Execution.
Take the next student's question.
I want to start off by thanking you for coming here. It's been wonderful so far.
Thank you.
My question relates more to advertising. So in recent years, there's been a trend of startup companies being snatched up for very obscene prices, not because they've showed profit, but because they have a large user base. I just want to get your opinion on if you believe this is a sustainable market, if you think that you can turn these user bases into revenue large enough to justify these prices, and if you'd recommend us young students to forego seeking profits and building up user bases for companies.
Let me see if I can understand the question right.
So these companies like Snapchat and Yammer that don't really have a lot of revenue, but they have a lot of users.
Yeah.
Is that something you'd advise them to pursue?
Well, the key in the internet, everybody wants to own traffic. And only 2 have really done it where they really own it. And that's Google and Facebook right now. And there are others that have various levels of success with it. It's always been a big part of what Valueclick is about representing. And that's why we have all the different divisions with all the different traffic sources and all the different areas. But yeah, I think the idea of spending money to get lots and lots of users and without an end game is a failed plan. I think if you're getting users, there needs to be something on the back end that says, when does it start to pay off? And how does it pay off? I mean, just having users, if you don't know what to do with them, isn't going to do anything for you. And you say, oh wow, I got 10 million users. That's great. What are you doing? How are you making money with it? Are you selling advertising with it? That's the question you have to ask yourself. So that's the first. If somebody came to me with an idea like that, I would want to know, where does it make money? I do not buy into, grow a company, get volume, don't worry about profitability, it'll come later. Bull. And the reason Valueclick succeeded, if you look back in those times, it was about 400 public companies just prior to the dot-com meltdown. 100 of them survived it. Because they bought into a lot of what bankers were really pushing. And we got a lot of criticism when we were trying to take our company public. Why are you making money? You should be getting more volume. You should be getting more. Why are you making money? I said, well, that's the way I learned to grow a business. And sorry, that doesn't work. By the way, all those bankers were looking for jobs like 6 months later after they got that meltdown. But But you know, it's not. I don't really want to overemphasize how the importance so much of being profitable. I want to emphasize the ability to be profitable, because you may make a conscious decision that once you prove out your model, that you're going to raise $10 or $50 million, and you're going to take this $50 million and you're going to drive. But as long as you know that that model is back there, that you can always get it to profitability by scaling back some of your investment. So it's profitable is great. The ability to be profitable is the most important thing.
So getting back to work environment and team, and you use the word fun a lot, and I know you, and I know you do like to have fun, but I don't want the students to misunderstand what that means. In a good way. Yeah, in the work context. And I love one thing you said to me. You said, John, I wasn't the easiest guy to work for, but people liked working for me. So maybe just talk for a minute about what does that mean in the workplace? It's not all about fun and games, it's about getting stuff done. How did you balance those two things?
You know, if a person comes in with the right, if they come in with average intelligence, with a great attitude and enthusiasm and willingness to work, they're going to make it. Tell you flat. Average intelligence makes it. What doesn't make it?
Proof of that, by the way.
Maybe average, but if you come in with an attitude of entitlement, or you come in with the attitude, well, you know, what time is it? I got to go now. I mean, time me, you know, before you finish your job, and you're watching the clock, and you don't seem to care. The thing that would boil me the quickest is a bright mind that doesn't care. They don't fit. I don't care how smart you are, how good you are. If you don't care, you're going to be poison to all of the other people in the organization, and you got to go. You know, but if you just have that desire, and you like working with people, you're gonna make it. You're gonna do just fine.
Yep, and I think people with that desire and the right attitude, they don't mind being held accountable. You know, it's let people know what's expected of them, and then make sure they get it done.
You know, it just doesn't. You know, it doesn't take a lot, you know, to please your employer.
Right.
You know, all you have to show them is that you care about your job, and that you want to do a good job for them.
Right.
You know, and all the other stuff. Not everybody is going to be an entrepreneur like yourselves. You know, some people are going to be just great employees, and they don't want to open their own business. They don't want to take the risk that's involved in it. They don't want to do all that. They want security. And that's your responsibility as an entrepreneur, to give them that security. You know, in those companies that I acquired that were in trouble, and we had to go and make some really tough decisions. Anytime I did, I would gather the people together after we made the tough decision, which might be including laying off 20 or 30 or 40% of the company. Then I would call the folks together in a group like this, and I would say, this was not a good day. You know, we lost people that we shouldn't have lost. And I promise you that I will never allow this company to get in that position again. And that what we're going to build together is going to be something that's fun and exciting, and we're going to be profitable. And you can look at it two ways. If you had 500 people and 250 of them had to go away, you saved 250 jobs. Because had someone not come along and made these tough decisions, all 500 would have been gone. So that's my attitude towards it. And when you explain that to people openly, honestly, they get it. They understand. They become part of the team very quickly. And they say, yeah, you know, that you're right. We weren't making. I know we were losing money. It wasn't working. We were going to. Everybody was afraid that their job was going to go away. So, well, guess what? It isn't. We had to make some tough decisions, but we made them, and we're on our way. And now, from here on out, it's positive. And I promise you, I won't ever put you in that position again where you have to worry whether your job's going to be here or not.
That's excellent. We'll take the next question from the students.
Thank you for coming to speak with us. This is a double-pronged type of question, but because of your position and experience in marketing, What is your opinion on the ethics of the dynamic between marketing and consumer privacy? And what do you believe the role should be between personalization and marketing strategies and the marketing strategies of companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google?
Well, let me take the first part of that on privacy. We lost privacy long before the internet because some of the biggest sellers of information were the federal and state governments. And I found that out when I did what I did with the Department of Motor Vehicle, that your information was already being sold, so don't worry about it. What I do believe is that personal data, personal information should not be sold. I said, so far as, I'm not in favor of that. I am fine with the internet tracking what the computer is doing. Not you by name, you by phone number or address, or any personal information. But so far as what the computer is buying or with an intent to serve up an ad to you that makes sense, that you might be interested in. So if you buy from Amazon, I assume you probably do, most people do, you notice that when you buy, that when you go down the page, that all the things you bought are up there, and you want, saying, well, this is what you bought for, maybe you want some more, right? I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. But so far as personal data, personal information, I believe that should be protected. I don't think our world does it. I don't think our country does it. But I think that's the way advertising should work. Was that the whole question? Yeah.
So take us back to '96. I was 6 years old, I think. I can't remember. Maybe 5. Take us back to '96. So the internet's happening. You've had success with the company you sold to ADP.
Yep.
What drew you to the hosting company? What were the opportunities you were looking at, and why did you jump in there?
Okay, if you remember '96, AOL was dropping CDs out of airplanes so that everybody could get onto AOL, and they were the company of choice. The small company I went to was trying to be an internet access company. And these were very clueful, smart technologists that were far ahead of the game without knowing it.
Yep.
And when I looked at the company was losing money, and and I looked at it and I said, you guys are trying to be a tier 1 provider of internet access. That game's over. AOL won it back then. None of this other stuff was even around. But I said, yeah, that game's over. They're selling it for $19.95, and another company next door to you just went public by the name of Netcom. Do you remember that name? Mm-hmm. So, and I said, well, this internet access, you need $40, $50, $60 million to build a backbone to do it. And they said, yeah, well, but we have this other thing we do, shell account and web hosting. And I said, web hosting? I said, well, how's that? And here they were trying to be a national internet provider when they only had modems in San Francisco. It was a joke. But here they had web hosting, and they did it better than anybody in the industry, and it wasn't a commodity yet. They had web hosting, and it could serve the globe, right? You can sell web hosting from Mountain View, California, to anybody in the world. And I said, my gosh, we're missing the real opportunity is web hosting. And so I immediately invested in that company and took it in that direction and said, we'll continue to provide internet access to the people here in the Bay Area, but web hosting we're taking outside. And then we went out and we started looking at other businesses that were doing web hosting. We found Highway Technologies down in Florida. We acquired it. Mm-hmm. And then we literally had the plane on the tarmac running to begin our roadshow to take it public when Vario bought us.
Oh, wow.
And glad they did, because now it's a commodity and it's free. But we were getting a pretty good chunk of money provided back in those days.
But do you think it was your time at RCA of going into new organizations and having to sort of ferret out what the opportunities were? Was that what helped you when you?
That was all RCA because as they sent me from one location, I wasn't really looked at as a turnaround guy, but it just happened that every place I went was in trouble. They were letting someone go, or the business was in trouble. It either had union problems, or it had productivity problems, or lack of sales, any one of those things. And you know, I found they're all common sense when you really get down to it. You know, I happen to love turnarounds because I'm not the greatest idea guy. You know, I didn't come up with Valueclick. Brian Coryat did that. You know, I love this idea, and I say, oh, good, I'll do that. I'll do that with you. And the same with local market launch here in town. You know, that's Brian's idea. It's not mine. I'm not the idea guy. But if somebody messes up, I can figure out how to fix it. So that was kind of my strength, and I still to this day like looking at businesses that aren't being run very well, that might be losing money, but have, in my mind, an opportunity to get to profitability.
Yep. Well, don't undersell yourself. I think having that ability to see those opportunities when companies are losing money, that's where most people don't see the opportunity, right? Yep. They just see the risk. Yep. So we'll take the next student question.
Well, thank you for coming to speak with us. My question was, according to the Peter Principle, a manager rises to his or her own level of incompetence. If you were the manager in question, how would you realize that you are no longer fit or competent for the position, and how would you break through that?
That's a great question. It's very important. I can relate to it because I replaced myself about 1.5 years ago. And I thought I was the right guy for Valueclick, for the trip that we were taking. And that was to be able to provide digital solutions to companies that were advertising, whether it was mobile, video, display, whether it was affiliate marketing, whether it was cost per lead, cost per action, whatever it was. And that's what drove me to put these components together. The technology that was available in 2006, 7, 8 wasn't fast enough to take the data from all those various places and bring it together into one central area and still serve an ad up fast enough within 1/4 second. No, there was no technology that could take that much information, process it that quick. When that became possible, the opportunity of utilizing data more efficiently became a real opportunity to grow businesses. And I thought I was successful in bringing these pieces together, and all my pieces all made money. I had great presidents running each one of those divisions. My last acquisition was a data company, a company that really knew and understood how to take all that information and to make something better with it. And I was able to convince the CEO of that division to be the CEO of Valueclick. And I knew then it was time for me to step away. So in answer to your question, how do you know? I don't know what the magic is. I just think that you have to be big enough to know, you know what, I'm not the best guy for this. We need somebody smarter. You know, we need somebody that knows what I don't know to take it to that next level. And I, you know, part of me kind of lost, you know, you feel that loss. Every time I sold a company, I felt like I lost one of my children because it was my family that I sold. This is a similar situation. I stayed as chairman, in fact, still chairman of that company because we haven't closed the deal yet, next month, hopefully. But I think you just have to know when it's time, when somebody else is the better solution.
So again, self-awareness.
Hi, Brian. Brian, would you stand up? This is Brian Coryat, everybody. Brian
Founder of Valueclick and local market launch. Give me a hand. Another internet pioneer in our midst.
So I love it because Brian always goes around and says, "Well, Jim Zarley is my mentor." Brian is my mentor, right? You know, and we mentor each other. And he is really a guy that just has ideas. He's just a lot smarter than I am, but he just is fun to work with. He believes all those things I'm telling you about having fun, about creating. That's Brian Coryat. That's what he does.
And local market launch is hiring, so be sure to see Brian.
Not too many though.
Yeah, not today.
Not too many.
Maybe in a couple weeks. So Jim, you've had experience in low technology, the restaurant chain, and other what would be considered sort of low tech, and a lot of high tech. What advice would you give to a student today if they were trying to figure out which direction they wanted to go?
I think you go where your passion is. An example, Texas Roadhouse. I love this organization. They got a great culture in that organization. Their mission statement is 4 words, and 2 of them are the same: legendary service, legendary food. That's it. End of story. And the founder of this is a person just like us. He worked in a restaurant. He worked at Bennigan's. He wrote on a napkin his dream of building this restaurant called Texas Roadhouse. He decided finally that he was going to do it. He borrowed money from his parents. He borrowed money from his neighbors. He overdrew on his credit cards to get the first restaurant going. And he's the most humble guy you want to meet. His name is Kent Taylor. Kent now has been responsible for picking every single location. And he has 434 now locations. Took the company public, probably worth $300-400 million, I would guess. I don't even know, but I know it's hundreds of millions. But if he was sitting here today, he'd be the most humble guy. And he's 58 years old, and he'd out-ski everybody in the place. He's just unbelievable shape. But here, my point is, you can make a lot of money in a lot of areas. It doesn't have to be high tech. If that's your passion, then obviously pursue it. But 65% of the people who run Texas Roadhouses that are managed today, making good money, started washing dishes or working on waiting tables. 65% of them. And and going back to that first job I had, washing trucks, I'm sure that every one of those people that are running those stores today never intended to wash dishes their whole life or to wait on tables their whole life. They came in, they saw the energy, they got caught up in it, they became a very positive force behind it, and now are leading it.
There's a lot to like in that story. I like the essentially business goal, business dream on a napkin. I mean, you don't have to have a Wharton MBA to have a great business.
No, I think most of my ideas were on pieces of scrap paper or something, right, Brian? And I think we were doing that today again. But anyway, but my friend, Kent Taylor, kept the napkin. And he has it framed. So it's great.
That's wonderful.
But there's lots of ways to make money. It doesn't have to be in high tech. High tech is fun. What I love about high tech, I'm jealous of you guys because you're all young and you got all these years in front of you. In all of my 50 years of working, I have never known a more exciting time to build a business and to be an entrepreneur than it is today. If you look at what's going on with internet and technology, we're in the beginnings, we're in the infancy still. Yeah. People ask me, what inning are we in? I say, hell, I'm not sure we're in the first inning yet. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of opportunities. And while the internet itself, what Google is doing, yes, they own that component. But there's a 1,000 other things that need to be done. The kinds of things that Ryan is doing, the mobile business and opportunities in the mobile business and the video business and developing your own video ads and doing stuff like that. Those are all exciting things. And it's going to be that way, in my mind, probably for the next 30 years or better. And it just isn't a better time. Whatever you're doing, I would bet that most of you are working high tech 20, 30 years from now, because that's where everything's at. That's where it's going. But you're still going to need restaurant tours. You're still going to need all of these other things, these other chains that can be built.
Yep. Yeah, your kids will laugh at you one day, just as my kids laugh at me when they see like a payphone or something in a movie and ask me what that is. So things are moving at light speed, and I think this really is a great time for you guys because you can start a business with such a small amount of money today with Amazon services and all the open software. So no excuses.
John's he'll be happy to fund you. Any of you guys want to start?
I'll be writing checks after class. Line up. Yes. Happy Halloween. We'll take the next student's question.
Hello, thanks for your wise words thus far. So Valueclick recently changed its name to Conversant. So I was wondering what the main reason behind changing the company's name and what is involved in the process of rebranding a well-known company. In addition, what is the importance of rebranding a company's image, and how often should a successful company consider rebranding itself, if necessary at all?
You know, I was afraid that question was going to come up because, you know, we always felt that the name, as we continued to acquire businesses, that it wasn't going to really define who we were. Personally, myself, and I'm sure Brian as well, being the founder, we're kind of attached to that name, right? We kind of love it, you know. But I didn't get in the way of it changing because I knew in my heart this probably is the right thing to do, to really brand what we do as a total business. So I wasn't really entirely for it, but I supported it because I felt, A, that the leadership needed that support, and that ultimately it was probably the right thing to do. I was sorry to see it go, and I still call it Valueclick. So, but my business cards say Conversant now. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm the same way about brand. When a company in our portfolio comes and says, I think we need to change the name, I often say, I think we've got other problems to solve first. Then we'll change the name.
I fought it for at least 10 years. You know, but once I turned the reins over, it was time to let somebody else take their vision and go with it. And I knew it wasn't going to hurt the company. You know, it's just that I was sad to see the name kind of go away. I like all the names. I thought Commission Junction was a great name. I love that name. And Mediaplex I thought was a great name. And I thought Valueclick Brands was a great name where we owned our brands. And I thought Datomi was a great name for a company that is involved with one-to-one marketing and data. It was if you look up the name, it's one-to-one marketing. And frankly, I was voting for the name of Datomi to be the name because it really had a great description. Our CEO felt that the rest of the organization wouldn't feel warm and fuzzy about it because he didn't want any one of our current names to be the name. Right. So I said, okay, yeah, let's go. But just keep growing the business, okay?
Right. We'll pick a neutral name and keep growing.
Get a name and grow the business.
Right. Well, I know one thing the students are interested in, I get questions about public relations, PR. I've seen you on TV. I know a number of the students have seen you on TV talking about your company, speaking to different constituents. What advice do you have for handling PR as a small company? And to what extent should the students be pursuing PR at the beginning stages of their startup?
I wouldn't even think about it when you're doing a startup. You know, there's so many things to consider. And PR is after you've really proven it. Because think about it, if you go out trying to get PR before you've actually proven the model, you might embarrass yourself. It's because your model may change. And I would wait until you've defined the product, until you have gone that second stage and said, you know what, we've proven the product out with that first investment that we had, whether it's $1 million or $2 million, whatever it is. We've proven it out. Now it's time to raise a bigger chunk of money to scale this company more quickly. And inside of that then needs to be a marketing program that says, here's how we need to either get investor relations, public relations, and the way that you would do that once you get to that stage would be to get involved in all the various conferences, trade shows. I'm not a big fan of big booths at trade shows, but I think having hospitality suites where you're calling in customers and you're selling and you're holding people accountable for sales when they come home, right? That's the kind of involvement. If you sit on those panels, you're talking to whatever industry you're involved in. You sit on, and they always have typically in these, they have several various panels that talk about certain things. I would have the PR people get involved in that. And then locally, if there's a value in your local advertising, then it's time to bring the newspapers in. I wouldn't bring newspapers in before you really are sound in what you're talking about and that you're certain that your model is what it is. I'll tell you a quick story about when the dot-com meltdown hit. Everybody that was in the business, whether you were doing better or worse than somebody else, everybody was valued based on how much cash you had left. Because the market was assuming everybody was going broke. Well, when that happened, it was kind of like, it doesn't really matter. You didn't have any analysts covering you anymore. They all headed for the hills. They're all looking for jobs somewhere else. And so a newspaper came to me, and a local one here, between here and LA, and said, well, what do you think about Wall Street? And I said, well, realistically, because we're all trading at our cash value, Wall Street, it doesn't matter anymore because they're not covering us. And we're just all, the people who are going to survive are the people who are running profitable businesses. And over time, as you prove that you can scale and continue to be profitable, then they'll be important. The headlines came out, Zarley says Wall Street doesn't count anymore. So I would just say be careful, because what they're looking for, they're building content. Just like in our business, we build content for our websites. They were building content. They didn't really care if they misquoted me. They were just looking for, they were looking for that. And when you finally go to the press or start bringing the press in, you should look at them in the same way. What can I get from them? What is it that I'm going to get out of this? If it's for my own brand, then I'd say forget it. At least Jim Zarley, because I've never been about building Jim Zarley brand. Jim Zarley's brand will be built by the performance for the businesses that he's ever run. And whether anybody remembers my name is, I don't care. I want them to remember the businesses that were successful. That's what I think is important. So I'm probably that way to a fault. I think if Warren Buffett were here, he'd say he wouldn't agree with that, but he thinks that you should do far more of your own brand recognition. And I was never a fan of it. If I would recommend you read a book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's a great read. I would advise you read that. That'll talk to you a little bit about branding.
Yeah, I think this audience gets influenced by TechCrunch and Pando Daily and some of these online sites that they're always, I shouldn't say always, often hyping an opportunity before the opportunity really exists. The Color was one from a couple years ago. It was this poor company that got so much hype, there's no way they could have lived up to it, and they didn't. Also, just sort of hyping the fundraising. I never quite understood that. You raised money, that's not something to go celebrate. That's something to hunker down and then execute on.
Yeah.
And don't sort of throw a big party about it.
The roadsides are full of failed businesses who tried to overhype and didn't focus on what's the substance of their business.
Yep.
And to hype a fundraising, I don't get it.
Right.
I don't get it. If you're bringing money in, you have a responsibility to those people who gave you their money to be successful in running that business. If you're hyping to overvalue a company, you're going to have a lot of unhappy investors that said, you know what, you sold me a bill of goods, and you told me that this company was already worth $50 million when it's only worth $5 million. Now I'm stuck here with a $50 million valuation, and you've got some hostile shareholders on your hands at that point. And it gets much more difficult for you.
Yeah, and I think it's harder to pivot and change direction when it's very public and you're out there and everyone knows what you're doing. It's easier to sort of mess around in a little bit, a little bit of the darkness.
Your investors are your partners. They are just like your employees are your partners. Your investors are your partners. You have a responsibility they've been trusted in you. You have a responsibility to make them money.
Right. Let's thank Jim for being here.